Something about this situation just feels a little uncomfortable right now. It's still early, there's still plenty we haven't seen yet, but there are enough little signs starting to pile up that you can't completely ignore them. And if you've been watching closely, you probably know exactly what I mean. If you're feeling the same way, hit that like button and drop "Go Hawks" in the comments. There is a concern beginning to build around Seattle, and it has nothing to do with declaring that something has already gone wrong. The Seahawks are still in the preseason. The starters have not even been given the opportunity to show everything they can do in a real game, and making a definitive judgment now would be premature. But after what happened in the first preseason game, what was reported from the joint practices, and what was shown in the latest episode of Hard Knocks, one uncomfortable question is starting to become harder to ignore. Could Seattle eventually have to deal with some kind of Super Bowl hangover? That is not a prediction. There simply is not enough evidence yet to say that. In fact, anyone trying to declare in the middle of the preseason that a Super Bowl hangover definitely exists would be getting far ahead of what we actually know. But the concern comes from a pattern that has at least started to become noticeable. The first preseason game came without the starters, so there was always going to be a limit to what could reasonably be taken from it. Seattle was playing a lot of second- and third-team players, and early season execution issues are understandable under those circumstances. Still, the execution did not always look clean. Then came the joint practices, where the situation became more interesting because the first-team players were involved. Seattle had positive moments, but the Seahawks apparently needed some time to get going. That matters because this is the closest look available right now at many of the players who will actually be asked to carry this team once the games count. At the same time, there is another side to the story. Seattle's second unit went out and dominated the Tennessee Titans at one point, which is exactly the kind of performance that should prevent anyone from turning preseason concerns into a full-blown crisis. There have been good moments. There have been encouraging signs. This is not a situation where everything surrounding the Seahawks has looked negative. The problem is that fans are not going to get the definitive answer they want immediately. The starters are not playing against Kansas City. They will not be out there Friday night. According to the discussion, the real answer may not come until September 9th, when Seattle takes the field against the New England Patriots in a Super Bowl rematch. Until then, everyone is going to be trying to interpret practices, preseason performances, and what is being shown behind the scenes. And Hard Knocks gave Seahawks fans plenty to process. Perhaps the most difficult part was watching what happened with Jake Bobo. His situation had been moving in the right direction. He was getting healthy, getting back onto the field, making plays, and even produced an incredible catch in the end zone before Seattle went down to Nashville. Everything appeared to be progressing positively. Then Mike Macdonald made a decision involving Cooper Kupp during the joint practice. Macdonald approached Kupp from the perspective of managing an older veteran leader who Seattle needs available. The message was essentially that the team needs him contributing on the field rather than ending up on the sideline because of an injury, so Kupp was held out that day. That decision meant more repetitions for Bobo. Nobody is being blamed for what followed. It was not Macdonald's fault. It was not Kupp's fault. It was not Bobo's fault, and it was not the defender's fault. Sometimes an injury simply happens, but understanding that does not make watching it any easier, particularly after seeing Bobo working his way back and appearing to turn a corner. Bud Clark's situation made the episode even more difficult. Unlike a surprise injury that viewers had no idea was coming, Seahawks fans already knew Clark had been hurt. They had watched the game. They had seen what happened, and the news that he was being placed on injured reserve had already arrived. His season is done. Hard Knocks still took viewers directly into that moment. Clark immediately understood the seriousness of what had happened. He grabbed his ankle and said that he had broken it. Seeing that scene after already knowing the outcome gave the episode a completely different emotional weight. It was one of those moments where having additional access to a football team does not necessarily make being a fan easier. Instead of simply reading that a player had suffered a major injury, viewers were watching the realization hit him in real time. And that is a major reason this episode could leave Seahawks fans feeling more bummed than excited. But calling the episode emotionally difficult does not mean it was a bad episode. In fact, one of its strongest moments may have revealed something very important about Mike Macdonald as the leader of this team. Macdonald stood in front of his players and spoke about a friend and mentor who had passed away from ALS. He did not hide the fact that it was a difficult day for him. He allowed the team to see the emotion behind what he was experiencing, while also continuing to lead the room. The episode presented two drastically different sides of life. Brady Russell and his wife had welcomed a beautiful baby, representing one end of that cycle. Then Macdonald spoke about losing someone who had been a mentor, a friend, and someone who would support and cheer for the players. That vulnerability matters. Football environments do not always encourage people to publicly show a wide range of emotions. Yet Macdonald stood in front of his players, acknowledged what he was feeling, and shared something deeply personal with them. He went through the entire conversation while clearly carrying those emotions. Instead of making him look less like a leader, it may have done exactly the opposite. The belief expressed after watching that scene was that Macdonald's players could want to fight even harder for him because of it. It provided another example of why there is so much trust in his leadership. And that becomes especially relevant when discussing the possibility of Seattle struggling with the aftermath of its previous season. Suppose those fears eventually become reality. Suppose the Seahawks do start slowly, or things begin going sideways. The strongest reason not to panic may be the trust that Macdonald can identify the problem and get the team moving in the right direction. The concern exists, but so does confidence in the man responsible for handling it. And then, Hard Knocks gave Seattle another fascinating storyline. Trevon Diggs. Seeing John Schneider work through the process of bringing Diggs to Seattle added another layer to an already eventful episode. The excitement surrounding Diggs comes from the possibility that Seattle may have found significant value if his body is truly responding the way he says it is. Diggs explained that he is finally getting power when pushing off his leg again, and that his leg feels strong. That is the part Seahawks fans should be watching closely. The claim was not simply that Seattle added another name to the roster. The possibility being raised is that, if Diggs can perform anywhere close to the level Seattle needs, this move could end up looking like a major steal. The phrase used to describe it was essentially highway robbery if it works. But there is also a limitation now. The portion of camp where fans and media could easily observe everything is largely over. Practices are becoming more locked down, so information is going to arrive in smaller pieces. What one person said, what another person reported seeing, and whatever details make their way out of the building. That makes it even more difficult to know exactly where Diggs stands before the games provide the real evidence. And that brings everything back to the larger question hanging over Seattle. There is enough here to be encouraged. There is enough here to trust Mike Macdonald. There is enough here to be intrigued by Trevon Diggs. But there has also been enough uneven execution and enough uncertainty surrounding the first-team group to create a little anxiety before the games actually matter. The Seahawks are approaching a huge final stretch before the season. There is another game coming, roster cuts are coming, the 53-man roster will have to take shape, and major decisions are about to become official. Very soon, speculation is going to give way to answers. For now, though, that uncomfortable thought is still sitting there. Is what we have seen simply normal preseason rust? Or are we getting the very first hints of something Seattle will have to overcome once the real games begin? Seahawks fans, what do you have to say about this concern? And after watching everything unfold, are you worried about a possible Super Bowl hangover or not? If you want every Seahawks update as soon as it happens, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. And before you go, click the video on your screen right now because the latest Seahawks news and the biggest developments are always waiting for you right here.